Good early evening, everybody. It's June 19th, 2024. It's 8:22 p.m. and just around 8 o'clock, in fact, precisely at 8 p.m., a criminal was in the air. Yeah, I call them mops and cops. The mops are the morons on patrol. The cops are the criminals on patrol. But then there's the criminals in the air, CIA, the criminals in the air. Well, there was one in the air, exactly 8 p.m., crossed directly over my property. Not around my property, not the usual flight path to go to Lexington, let's say. This was actually exactly over my property, crossed over my nonprofit building. Yes, going north. But anyway, thank you, subscriber, who sent me this link to a Fox Business news report 4 years ago. Now, this is 4 years ago. And why am I talking about my favorite Bureau of Instigation? My favorite Bureau of Instigation. The one when I called to tell them that my house was being broken into and that the Manalapan Police Department were falsifying reports, hung up on me. Yeah, imagine that. Imagine calling the FBI and being hung up on for telling the truth about the Manalapan Police Department falsifying reports. Anyway, Fox Business has a 4-minute clip. I won't play all of it. I don't want to get copyright, but I'll play enough of it for you to understand that this has been discussed repeatedly. And this is 4 years ago. Judge rules. FBI terror watch list violates the Constitution. Yeah, it violates the Constitution. Yes. So anyway, let's play this clip a little bit. And let me just, we're going to have to skip through this advertisement. This is just so annoying, guys. I'm going to have to cut this out.
A federal judge ruling the FBI's terror watch list violates the Constitution. This list allows the government to identify terrorists trying to get on planes or enter the U.S. Now, it includes over 1 million people, including 4,600 Americans. Here now, Fox News senior judicial analyst Judge Andrew Napolitano. Judge, does the terror watch list violate the Constitution?
Well, I think that this federal judge in Alexandria, Virginia, made the right decision on the basis of the law as we understand it. So the FBI, which
it's not exactly an answer to my question, but go ahead.
Well, I agree with him, and I would have done the same thing.
So it does violate the Constitution?
Yes. Obviously, not everybody agrees with that statement, and his decision will be appealed. But his decision is based on the following. The FBI uses subjective standards, unproven allegations, rumor, innuendo, and to some extent, ethnic background.
Do you hear that? The FBI uses subjective innuendo, rumors, and sometimes the ethnic background
in order to put people on this list. So 26 American citizens challenged this. Some of them, as a result of being on this list, couldn't fly, couldn't get on a train, couldn't cross an interstate border. They were stopped trying to pay tolls at the George Washington Bridge, couldn't enter schools and couldn't enter hospitals, because what came out of this case is the fact that the FBI shares this list with local and state governments.
Okay, that is really important. That not only are innocent people being placed on the list based upon innuendo, rumors, it's very subjective, but they're sharing the list with local and law enforcement.
So when the FBI tried to demonstrate the manner in which it puts people on here, it was so subjective the judge threw it out. The right to travel is a fundamental liberty. Supreme Court has said that since 1969. A fundamental liberty is in the same category as speech and thought and religion and privacy. That can't be interfered with by a secret list. It can only be interfered with by due process. You want to put somebody on there, you have to hold a trial, and they have the right to challenge it.
There you go. That is really important, and that is what is not happening to targeted people. We have no due process. We should have a right to a trial. We should have a right to present our evidence. We should have a right to subpoena those individuals who have harmed us, including police, sheriff, your neighbors, to provide testimony. That's what due process is. Due process is being able to testify before a judge, not some secret list, not some secret procedures. We should have a right to publicly address what is happening to us, a right to a fair trial, a jury trial, a jury of our peers, and the entire due process, including but not limited to the ability to obtain legal counsel.
Edward Kennedy was put on the list 15 years after he made some statements in favor of the IRA and their then violent activities in Northern Ireland. It took him months to get off that list.
Judge Gary Kalpam here.
Gary!
Well, I find that really interesting. JFK, RFK, I should say, RFK was placed on the list 15 years after he made some statements. 15 years later. That's a long time. But now they're saying that it took him months to get his name off the list. Now, from what you and I understand is that once you're placed on the list, there is no method for getting off the list. So I would be really curious as to how he addressed the fact that he's on a list after making a comment, making statements, 15 years later being placed on the list. Who did he address to get off of the list? And is he really completely off the list? I would be really curious to find out. I'm sure you guys would too.
So, how are you, sir?
Okay.
I was looking at the numbers, and doesn't it hurt the case that just in the last 5 years, the amount of people on the list has gone from 600,000 and change up to 1.2 million? And I guess people arguing can say, look what you're doing here. You're just throwing everybody onto this list.
It hurts the government's case, yes. Because the government, and one of the things that so animated this federal judge is that no FBI agent who testified in the case gave the same story or the same understanding as to how they put people on the list. They just put them on the list. And if there was any doubt, the doubt should be in favor of freedom, not in favor of being put on the list. They flipped that and put them on the list if there was any doubt.
Wasn't the issue, too, that they didn't actually tell them why they were on the list to begin with?
Not only did they not tell them why, they didn't tell them they were on. So you're crossing the George Washington Bridge from New Jersey to New York, the way you go when you pay a toll. And the toll taker says, I'm not going to take your money. And the Easy Pass doesn't work. And they don't let you go forward. And you don't know why. And nobody tells you why until a year later, your lawyer files a lawsuit. And in the lawsuit, she finds out why.
What's the recommendation then?
Well, they're saying that, a year or two later, you're able to file a lawsuit and then you find out that you're on the list. Well, that happens for some individuals. Some individuals are able to retain an attorney, and that might be very, very early on in their targeting, right? They might be able to find out that they're on some kind of list. But for the most part, most of us are not able to even obtain legal counsel. We're having to file pro se, years later. But I want to add that these numbers are even skewed. Now, this is 4 years ago, and Fox Business, has reported on this 4 years ago, And their numbers are a little skewed because we know for a fact that the ACLU, via a FOIA request through the FBI, my favorite Bureau of Instigation, obtained information about the list. It's called, in a PDF, it's called Trapped in a Black Box, Growing Terrorism Watchlisting and Everyday Policing, and you can find that on my channel. I did read it in several videos, maybe 2 or 3 videos about that particular document. And what it basically says is that once you get on a list, you never get off. There is no due process, and that you are actually nominated by 2 people, but you're nominated. So it's not that like some FBI agent randomly is throwing people on the list. They're receiving nominations from someone. It could be your ex-husband, your ex-girlfriend. It could be a family member. It could be your neighbor down the block that's envious and jealous of you. It could be the feral cat cartel. It could be a lawyer that you pissed off. You know, it could be anybody. It could be somebody in the neighborhood that's jealous of you. Usually it's a narcissist who's envious and jealous and wants revenge, and they don't really care. Could be a celebrity narcissist. It could be anybody, okay? Anybody that is familiar with the program. And most people are not familiar that it even exists, although more people are coming to realize that there is a watch list, especially after, you know, January the 6th day there, and all of those people ended up on the list and, you know, had come forward to discuss what transpired after that, you know, innocent people just being there. So, but what happens is we don't find out for years later, you know, our houses are being broken into. We don't know why. We're going to the police to file reports and they're ignoring us. Why is that? We find out many years later, like I have been targeted at least since 2012, but the more I research historically, I think it was more towards 2009. I didn't really realize what was going on until 2017 when I came across, you know, when I was performing research online and came across, you know, Ella Fraud's podcasts and everything. And she was interviewing a lot of targeted people, and then I came across, you know, the other call-in numbers and stuff, but I had no frame of reference for being stalked by a group of people, with my house being broken into, my pets being poisoned and harmed. I had no reference point for that. You know, I was a divorced single mom living alone at 52 Sutton Drive, Manalapan, New Jersey, in a home I lived in for 30 years as the original owner. Had sent my daughter off to university, and then suddenly, you know, I have all this hell breaking loose. But in hindsight, it was actually breaking loose while my daughter still lived at home. I mean, I can't really go into all the details of that, but it was while she was still living at home. A lot of this stuff was happening. It was sort of like suddenly we had a roof leak and water was gushing in from my roof into the hallway. They're just totally out of the blue. And I know because I was at a friend's house. Well, my ex-friend, Sue Ann, you know, the certified death investigator who asked me who I pissed off after she looked at the evidence of my house being broken into. Yeah, that one. But anyway, I was actually at her house, and my daughter calls me up and says that there's water gushing from the roof into the hallway. And I drove home quickly. Actually, Sue Ann came with me. I called my roofer. He told me what to do, which was really interesting. If this ever happens to you, get an umbrella. Get an umbrella. And what happened was I had a, what do you call it? An attic fan. An attic fan. And suddenly it came loose. I don't know why it came loose. It was probably because some perpetrator was up there and loosened it. But anyway, if this happens to you, you get an umbrella. Yeah, an umbrella. And you stick it through the hole in the roof, and then you open the umbrella. Yeah, it was a miracle. It was absolutely amazing. And then, you know, the next day I had the roofer come in and repair it for me. But that was around 2009 when that happened. And it was very bizarre and unusual. But according to Trapped in a Black Box Growing Terrorism Watch Listing, at that time, the FOIA information that was published by ACLU was in 2016 based upon 2006 and 8 FOIA information. There were 900,000 people on the list then. We know, fast forward, that there are right now between 4 million and 8 million innocent people on some watch lists. Once you get on, you don't get off. They keep switching you from list to list to list. Yes. So anyway, this is Lorraine Alternative Homesteading, discussing my favorite Bureau of Instigation and their watch lists. Yes. And the helicopter that flew over my property precisely 8 p.m. And just remember that I am powerful, you are powerful, and we are powerful together. And they are cowards, because it takes only a couple of cowards to stalk. Imagine, to stalk a woman. So many women, 70% on the list are women. Yeah, so many are women. It's not that there aren't men. Yeah, men, you're a representative out there also. But 72%, I believe it is, are women on the list. So they really dislike us for some reason. I wonder why that is. I'm a little confused, because they're turning boys into women, and then they're watch listing the real women. And then they don't even want us to have babies anymore, so they're creating fake wombs. But that's a story for another day. Anyway, I'm going to sign off for now before I get myself into some trouble here. This is Lorraine Alternative Homesteading.